Good evening. Our sign language interpreter is Njoki Shege. We're beginning at the presence of Parliament, that is at the County Hall, and the 4-day-long vetting of Cabinet nominees that kicked off today. In Chile, National Administration Cabinet Secretary nominee Professor Gituku was put to task on how families who lost their loved ones through police bullets during the national or nationwide anti-government protest will get justice. Kindiki says that only 42 people died during the demonstrations, maintaining that he would not resign from office following the police killings, arguing that his duty as a CS is limited to policy direction and not operational. He told the vetting team that he had nothing to do with commanding the police officers during the protests. Kindiki disclosed to the Speaker Moses Wetangula-led committee that during the 20 months he was in office, his net worth grew by 150 million shillings, saying that part of it is from his small businesses. Emmanuel Toh reports.
Welcome. He was the first to take the hot seat as the marathon 5-day approval hearings for President William Ruto's cabinet nominees kicked off in earnest at Parliament buildings. The 20-member committee on appointments, starting by revisiting the police killings during the nationwide anti-government protests, with Kindiki maintaining that the Independent Policing Oversight Authority bore the responsibility to pursue officers who may have used excessive force on innocent civilians.
It is now the work of the Independent Police Oversight Authority and other accountability agencies to help the country to bring to closure the issue of justice for excess use of force.
Whereas the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, a government agency, had accounted for over 60 bodies, Kindiki, however, insists only 42 people died in the month-long protests.
We witnessed the death of 42 Kenyans. We also had injuries, 486 civilians.
And even with the pressure from members mounting on why he hadn't followed the Inspector General in resigning, Kindiki maintained he was not directly involved in giving operational commands to the police. This despite issuing warnings to would-be protesters on what would befall them.
We have seen people pretending to be protesters, damaging road infrastructure and other amenities. I dare you to try that.
Recently, saw in the US that a gunman tried to shoot a presidential nominee. The head of Secret Service resigned their post.
The minister did not resign in the US. I don't know why the Kenyan minister must resign. I can only resign if my policy instruction is unconstitutional.
In the heated 3-hour vetting session, Kindiki also made a case for the contentious plan by the government to have all Kenyans renew their identity cards after every decade.
If you are going to have that ID last for 10 years, then you must put in place a seamless renewal process.
The reason for the 10-year limit is actually one reason. It's because of changes in technology. The ID that has expired will continue operating until you get a new one.
During the sittings, Kindiki revealed that he had become 150 million shillings richer since taking over the mantle of the security docket in October 2022.
My wealth, which has increased from 544 million to 694 million. Much of that revenue has actually come through the revenue from my law firm.
Beatrice Askul Moe, who was nominated to the East Africa Community and Regional Development docket, and Attorney General nominee Dorcas Oduor will each face the panel on Friday, 9th August.
Professor Abraham Kithure Kindiki will not be waiting for the verdict of the Committee on Appointments, which will be wrapping up its activities on Sunday, and thereafter write a report which will be tabled in the House to decide the fate of the CS who occupied office for the past 21 months. Emmanuel Toh, Citizen TV, Parliament Buildings, Nairobi.
And as Professor Kindiki sought to absolve himself from blame for the loss of more than 60 lives through excessive use of force by the police, hundreds of victims are still waiting on government agencies to dispense justice. While before the vetting committee, Professor Kindiki indicated that all the National Police Service is responsible for the apparent use of excessive force, individual police officers should also be held liable. This statement sending a ray of hope to one family from Kisii whose kin was incapacitated after he was injured by a tear gas canister in June during the anti-government protests. Laura Otieno reports.
Thursday morning at Nyaura village in Kisii County, Daniel Mageka drags himself to a shade. His older brother tends to these chicks, the only remaining birds from a flock of 100 chicken that this family sold to cope with medical expenses for Mageka. The scars are slowly healing. A tear gas canister exploded on his leg on the 24th of June at the height of the anti-government protests, and since then, life took a turn for the worse.
Hata kazi yangu nilikuwa ninafanya imesimama mpaka saizi. Mgonjwa akikuwa hospitali akiumia huwa anapewa kuna fimbo hizo za kutembelea, lakini sasa mimi sikupewa, nilikuja nyumbani. Nikakuja nikaona wacha nitafute fimbo nitembelee.
Nimeona kama ni hasira sana. Hata huyu mtoto yake kwenda shule, hana pesa, anafika anafukuzwa, maana yeye ndiye alikuwa anatafuta analeta.
While appearing before the National Assembly's Committee on Appointments on Thursday, ghosts of the anti-government protests haunted the Interior Ministry nominee Professor Kindiki, who seemed to absolve himself of any wrongdoing. While acknowledging calls for justice by families of victims who are either killed or injured during the protests, Kindiki indicated that the mandate of the CS is only on policy issues and not on operational duties. While indicating that 486 people were injured during the protests, some, like Mageka, are not even aware of the due processes they need to follow to jolt the wheels of justice rolling.
Angalia, kuna watu waliumia kwa maandamano na ni reti yao kuandamana, lakini sasa venye maskari wamepiga watu wengine wameumia, tafadhali uziangalie na uweze kusisaidia.
As the dust slowly settles, Mageka, like hundreds of other victims of blatant use of unjustified force, continue to wallow in misery. They clinch onto hope that they will not slip through the cracks and that justice will ultimately be served. Laura Otieno, Citizen TV.
And now back to the vetting room. A Health Cabinet Secretary nominee, Dr. Deborah Mulongo Baraza, has told Parliament that she will employ a collaborative approach in running the affairs at Afya House if confirmed as the next CS. Dr. Baraza told the Parliamentary Committee that her reign at the Ministry of Health will also embrace technology as a tool to disband cartels and improve service delivery. Brenda Wanga reports.
Do swear that the evidence I shall give before the committee on the matter under its consideration shall be the truth.
The internal medicine and infectious diseases doctor was a second in the hot seat as she sought to prove her suitability to lead the Ministry of Health.
Baraza, welcome to this.
Deborah was taken to task over her plans to steady the ship that is the Ministry of Health, a ministry that has over the years been plagued by scandals and industrial action from medical practitioners. She submits that her anti-graft efforts at Afya House will be technology-driven.
First of all, we can look at prevention than treatment. And one of the areas is the early warning indicators. We can use a digital platform, yeah? We can use, open tenders or transparent tenders. And we can use independent bodies to monitor this. And engaging the EACC and other bodies.
The nominee also pledging to address the human resource issues that have also been a thorny issue for the healthcare workers.
Will you support a health service commission, which everybody else has been talking about? Probably that's the panacea for the problems that we have in health.
From a leadership and a management perspective, it's always consultative. It's not a one-man show. The people, the National Technical Working Group, have been there for many years. They understand the situation, they understand the gaps, and they're able to come up with interventions. The thing that we need is to support them, to identify the gaps and come up with improvement plan. And so for me, I believe that it's critical that I give the leadership and bringing the people together to collaborate, to synergize, to harmonize, to improve the services that are being given.
If confirmed, she will be taking to the helm of the ministry in the middle of the transition from the NHIF to the SHIF, a move that has left many Kenyans in limbo in as far as accessing healthcare is concerned, especially for those dependent on the Linda Mama maternity care program. She says the country's mothers will not have to worry under her leadership.
I am a beneficiary of Linda Mama, and my daughter is a beneficiary of Linda Mama, and so I'm an advocate of it, and I will ensure that it's incorporated if SHIF is rolled out.
Deborah, who has served with the World Health Organization, also says she will be drawing from her international experience to straighten affairs at Afya House, especially on the use of technology.
One of the ways is using a digital platform that will reduce the human-to-human interaction and will be able to monitor challenges. And this needs to be implemented first on a phased approach, but ultimately at a national level.
The doctor also disclosed her net worth.
So my net worth is a combination of mine and my husband, and it's 455,845,320.
Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV.
Still at the vetting, Cabinet Secretary nominee for Education Julius Migos Ogamba says his immediate mandate, if approved by Parliament, will be to thwart the impending teachers' strike over the 2021 to 2025 collective bargaining agreement between the Kenya National Union of Teachers and the Teachers Service Commission. The advocate also pledged to address other critical issues affecting the education docket, including the thorny university funding model, recruiting of JSS teachers and CBC, among other issues. Seth Olale followed the proceedings.
I'll find favor with yourselves.
Julius Migosi Ogamba, whose net worth is 791 million Kenya shillings, was the fourth nominee to be vetted by the National Assembly's Appointment Committee at the mini chambers in County Hall. The experienced lawyer stating that his first assignment, if endorsed by Parliament, will be to intervene on the looming teacher strike in third term over a 10 billion shillings budget cut, which was supposed to facilitate the 2021-2025 CBA.
It is imperative that we arrest that situation by one, ensuring that we have clear and forthright discussions with the unions so that we are able to come up with a solution, because they also live in this country.
With CBC implementation one of the biggest headache for government, the immediate former chairman of KenGen promising to do anything possible to deliver 16,000 classrooms needed in 5 months' time by learners of Year 9 before January 2025, albeit unable to explain where the funding will come from.
Where will the grade 9s be? Will they be in senior secondary, or will they still be in junior secondary where there are no classes?
What I can say here is that I'm ready to take the decision that is in the best interest of the children.
The children of Kenya.
Yes.
In addressing the university funding crisis, Ogamba proposed that needy students receive 95% allocation, while able learners 60%.
It has some teething problems, and of course one of the challenges that it has is the means testing instrument is not wide enough to capture everybody and to be able to identify everybody's level of income in order to know the children from those homes what level of funding should they get from the university. So it is working, and it's work in progress.
The University of Nairobi law graduate pledging to oversee the continuation of the CBC, school feeding, and the school capitation programs to their logical success.
The only way to solve the problem, bedeviling the whole sector, is to find a way of raising enough funds to ensure that the provisions of the Constitution with respect to education are covered.
Ogamba, who was Ezekiel Machogu's running mate under UDA in the Kisii gubernatorial race of 2022, saying he is the right candidate for the job despite lack of experience in the public sector.
You are the running mate of the former cabinet secretary, Ezekiel Machogu. Kenyans have been asking, is this the right person for the job? Or is he going to just be an appendage of the person he was running as deputy governor for?
I'm ready and willing and able to offer leadership to get the kind of solutions that are required in the sector.
If approved by Parliament, Ogamba will take over from Ezekiel Machogu. Seth Olale, Citizen TV.
Now, Defence CS nominee Soipan Tuya says she will introduce a raft of measures to eradicate corruption in the recruitment of KDF if approved by Parliament. On the other hand, Land CS nominee Alice Wahome defended her tenure at Ardhi House that has been rocked by claims of land grabbing and corruption. Stephen Leto reports.
A University of Washington graduate, Soipan Tuya was back before the Committee on Appointments, where she was vetted 2 years ago. Nominated to the powerful docket of defense that has a slot in the National Security Council.
Hi, Rosalinda Soipan Tuya.
Soipan was taken to task on how she will combat corruption at the defense headquarters, particularly during recruitment. Tuya assured the committee that she will introduce sweeping changes to the recruitment exercise to curb the vice.
And it's almost becoming an official thing where a parent with a child going for recruitment comes to some of us as leaders and asks for money. Can you imagine? Money to be used to pay people in KDF. And it averages between 600 and 1 million. Imagine. You know, it's terrible.
Again, I want to reiterate that recruitment into KDF has become a preserve of the rich people.
Before any recruitment, you'll carry out extensive information dissemination to Kenyans that this recruitment is on merit, it is free, and any con fellow who comes around asking for money in exchange for slots should be reported to the nearest agencies, be arrested, be prosecuted.
Should I be confirmed for this position, I will also be a member of the National Security Council, and as has been stated here, the issue of recruitment malpractices may not only be within the KDF, so this is an issue of grave national concern.
Questions of extravagance during the national tree planting holidays, where cabinet secretaries traversed the country with choppers when she served in the environment docket, came back to haunt her.
We were at the forefront and very instrumental in the national tree growing campaigns. Kenyans and many of us were concerned about the amount invested in the various government officials, such as cabinet secretaries who transversed the country in choppers to participate in tree planting drive. While these exercises could have been conducted by the governors and the counties and our members of parliament and the people.
What is your net worth?
Mr. Speaker, my net worth stands at 448 million Kenya shillings.
How much were you worth at the last?
It was 156 million Kenya shillings.
I, Alice Modoni Wahome.
Earlier on, Lands Cabinet Secretary nominee Alice Wahome also appeared before the Moses Wetangula-led panel, where she was hard pressed to explain rampant land grabbing during her tenure at Ardhi House.
You are aware there have been very many cases of land grabbing around the country, and we've also seen you on TV on some land which was alleged to have been grabbed somewhere in Loresho.
Maybe you should ask, why did I think I should go there I'm taking this fight to the crime scenes.
The housing tax questions were also put before the Lands and Housing nominee.
What will be the housing plan for the rural people who are also paying this tax and paying this levy for people in towns to enjoy houses and to enjoy jobs? Nobody in my constituency or constituency rural who will enjoy those jobs. Nobody will enjoy housing or those housings.
First entry to the affordable housing program is the 290 constituencies. Every constituency is supposed to be a beneficiary when we roll out fully of a minimum of 210 housing units.
Are you the one I told last time about reading a book of a witness who talked too much?
No, not me.
What is your net worth?
That one I need it's about 300. Net worth is about 300.
You don't know your wealth of head?
No, not of. It's mine and my husband. So maybe what? 327,650,000.
Stephen Leto, Citizen TV.
Now, tonight, all eyes are on the Office of the Attorney General on what next for various government agencies following nullification of the Finance Act 2023 by the Court of Appeal. Sources of the National Treasury and the Energy and Regulatory Authority has told Citizen TV that they were waiting for direction on whether to effect the consequential judgment or wait for an appeal at the Supreme Court. The Court of Appeal decision affected major taxes, including tax on high cadre salaries, VAT on petroleum products, and several consumption taxes. Parliament is said to be reviewing the judgment for a possible appeal at the Supreme Court. Milita Oletinges now reports.
The ruling by the Court of Appeal declaring the Finance Act 2023 unconstitutional has left the government without a current Finance Act to regulate taxation, especially following the President's rejection of the Finance Bill 2024 in its entirety. This decision represents another setback for President William Ruto's administration, throwing into confusion the legal framework covering taxation and public finance. The ruling raises significant questions about the government's next steps in addressing this complex legal and fiscal situation. Sources within the Treasury have indicated to Citizen TV that there are plans to appeal the Court of Appeal's decision to the Supreme Court through the Office of the Attorney General. Sources within the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority have also intimated that they are awaiting a green light from the Office of the Attorney General in order to know the next steps. Key taxes that could be impacted by this decision include the VAT on petroleum products, which was increased from 8% to 16%. This ruling may provide relief to Kenyans as the reduction in VAT could lead to lower fuel prices, though consumers remain uncertain about when the court's nullification will take effect. Additionally, the payee tax bands are significantly affected. The now rejected act had introduced a new tax band of 32.5% for incomes between 500,000 and 800,000 shillings. For businesses, the requirement to remit withholding tax within 5 working days is expected to be rescinded, reverting to the previous schedule of remitting by the 20th of each month. The 2023 Finance Act faced legal challenges after widespread street protests led by the opposition, after President Ruto's government doubled the value-added tax on fuel and introduced a housing tax, making the cost of living unbearable. The Office of the Attorney General has yet to provide guidance on the Court of Appeal's decision as various government institutions assess the implications of this ruling. Melita Oletinges, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
And later on Data Point, we'll go into detail about what the Finance Act changed in the tax framework in the country. Over the last 1 year, President William Ruto's administration has suffered major legal setbacks at the courts, with at least 4 consequential decisions hurting the regime's defining moments, from the quashing of 50 appointments of chief administrative secretaries to decisions on revenue mobilization measures and universal health coverage agenda. The president's team has been kept busy at the courts defending laws that had been subjected to intense criticism while in parliament, only to end up in loss. The president's foot soldiers are now training their eyes on the judiciary, accusing it of judicial activism. Safin Acheng Oma explains.
The Kenya Kwanza government has suffered major setbacks since President William Ruto took over the reins of power, with a series of court orders blocking the implementation of key programs under his administration. The latest is the Court of Appeal's declaration of the Finance Act 2023 as unconstitutional, null and void. A three-judge bench held that the process leading to its enactment was flawed, as it failed to consider views of the public on various sections. According to political and governance expert Javas Bigambo, the opportunity to draw big lessons from the ruling must not be missed.
It should be a learning point to the National Assembly in this case, and also to the Senate and their various legal departments in the manner in which they conduct due process for legislation. The other significant office in the Republic that comes into sharp focus is the office of the Attorney General and the office of the Solicitor General. To what extent do they review bills that emanate from the executive and transmit it to Parliament for purposes of legislation? To what extent do they offer or render fine, efficient and effective advice to the executive?
When he was elected, President William Ruto hit the ground running with an ambitious, affordable housing plan whose aim was to build over 250,000 housing units every year. The fate of the program would, however, be thrown into disarray, courtesy of the overwhelming opposition of the move to deduct 1.5% of the gross income of salaried workers in Kenya to fund the base capital of the project. On 28th November 2023, the High Court declared the affordable housing levy unconstitutional on grounds that the levy was discriminatory against salaried workers. The government immediately embarked on a path to enact a standalone Affordable Housing Act, which took effect in March 2024. The new law, however, is the subject of yet another court challenge. On Friday, 12th July 2024, a three-judge bench comprising Justices Alfred Mabea, Robert Limo and Frida Mugambi declared 3 health laws unconstitutional. The 3 are part of the 4 new laws that are the foundation of President William Ruto's universal health coverage agenda.
A declaration is hereby issued that the entire Social Health Insurance Fund Act 2023, the entire Digital Health Act 2023, and the entire Primary Health Act 2023 are all unconstitutional for the reasons set out in this judgment and therefore invalid, null and void.
The judges argued that the laws were passed hurriedly without proper public participation.
I've been in Parliament for 12 years now. I can assure you there are very many illegal laws which have been passed by the so-called, when you just make a majority. There are very many laws whereby the public participation is just a sham.
On 25th of July, the courts put brakes on the rollout of Maisha number, a unique personal identification number assigned to the Maisha card, a third-generation digital identity card. The court also suspended the planned implementation of the National Master Population Register. This is after a Garissa-based lobby group, Haki na Sheria, challenged the planned rollout, citing loose ends in protection of personal data. In the heat of the anti-government protests, President William Ruto appointed a task force to conduct forensic audit of the public debt. The High Court has since stopped the task force from executing its mandate after 2 petitioners moved to court, arguing that the assignment by the President usurped the role of the Auditor General.
Why would the task force to examine national debt audit be gazetted to the exclusion of the control of budget, to the exclusion of the Auditor General, and even to the exclusion of the Attorney General himself or herself? within that task force. And so it raises a question as to whether, one, the Office of the Attorney General renders efficient, effective, and proper advice to the Office of the President and the Executive, or whether the Presidency seeks such advice from the Office of the Attorney General as the principal legal advice of government.
A year ago, on 3rd July 2023, the High Court quashed the appointment of 50 chief administrative secretaries who had been appointed in March 2023 and sworn in by President William Ruto. It was the biggest blow in his first year of office. The Kenya Kwanza administration subsequently passed a law in Parliament entrenching CSS offices. The President has since dropped the plan to appoint CSS on account of austerity measures occasioned by the public pressure to reduce government expenditure.
When every or various decisions of the executive are stopped by the courts by way of judgment that falls on the decisions or policy direction as a sledgehammer, it brings embarrassment to the Office of the President. It brings embarrassment to the President. It stops the wheel of policy formulation, formation, and implementation from turning.
The growing list of government's legislative and policy interventions which have beaten the dust has escalated the frustration of a section of leaders within government who are now turning their guns on the judiciary.
Parliament is the law-making body in the country. If the judiciary desires to be the lawmakers, they have the option of resigning from the judicial seats and come and run for parliamentary seats and come make laws in this house. This era, Honorable Speaker, of judicial activism and judicial dictatorship must and needs to come to an end, Honorable Speaker.
We may want to be a bit careful from trying to appear to intimidate the judges whenever they make decisions that do not seem to be in favor of the government of the day or the political class. We must let Parliament do its work. We must let the executive do its work. We must let the judiciary do its work. What should be the best alloy should be the rule of law and good governance.
Safin Achieng Ouma, Citizen TV.
All right, and on that note, we're taking a short break. When we come back, we have so much more stories, including this. On Data Point, we revisit the tax measures introduced by the now unconstitutional Finance Act 2023 and the possible implications.
Excuse me, can I get this? ไม่ได้ไหนเขากินกันมันเผ็ดเกินไปสำหรับคุณ Try me.
Economic advantage derived directly or indirectly as a result or in connection with an offence irrespective of the identity of the offender. In this case, conflict of interest is an offence under Section 42 of the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act. It is instructive to note that the courts have held that it is not necessary for the prosecution to prove a predicate offence before charging for money laundering. While ultimately the decision to charge rests with the DPP, the EACC, in publicly calling out the office of the DPP, has effectively challenged this regime's commitment to rooting out corruption in government, even when it may not be politically expedient. Olive Burrows, Citizen TV.
Officers from the Kenya Prison Service have threatened to go on strike after the government failed to implement the promised salary increment beginning July 2024. The prison warders staged a go-slow on Thursday, protesting what they described as poor pay and unfulfilled promises by the government. The prison officers were supposed to receive a salary increase of up to 2,000 shillings, and as Ben Kirui reports, a letter from the head of public service, Felix Koskei, has now directed that all the uniformed officers of the Kenya Prison Service from the lowest rank of constable receive a minimum monthly salary increment of 4,000 shillings.
When President William Ruto promised to increase the salaries of officers in the Kenya Prisons Service, servicemen and women waited with bated breath to see fat paychecks, but that expectation was short-lived at the end of July.
Hatujapata kitu. Mara wanasema circular yuko imefika. Kwa nini? Shida inaweza kuwa nini? Na wao wewe mwenyewe ulitangaza mbele ya ile kamati ya ile wakubwa walikuwa wamehudhuria kikao hapo Ikulu.
Officers from the lowest rank of constable anticipated a salary increase of up to 2,000 Kenya shillings, while their counterparts in the National Police Service received their allowances. The pay slips of the prison officers remained unchanged from the previous month.
We want to know because the askari hawana morali ya kazi, and I'm speaking for several of them. It's just because it's against policy, but ningetaka hata kuonekana because we don't fear anything.
A situation that has led to a go-slow, with officers threatening to down tools if the government does not meet its end of the bargain. A look into the payslip of a prison officer reveals the severity of the issue. A constable's gross pay is 47,800 shillings, but after deductions, they take home only 8,000 shillings.
Mshahara yetu ni 34,000. Ya ukikata kila kitu. So for example, ulipe hapa nyumba Nairobi cheap tu yenye inaweza kutoshana familia ni 15,000. Ulipe maybe kama uko na mtoto, ulipe house help 7,000 ama 6,000. Unaona hata haiwezi kutosha kulisha familia all through the month. So ukiona hata kikiona increment kama ya 2,000 ama 3,000 still pia itakuwa make changes mingi.
The challenges these officers face are not limited to remuneration. They also allege mistreatment from senior officers and poor working conditions.
Mambo ya uniform zikikuja wadosi wanajigawia wanasema ni zao. Inspectors and above.
Officers tunaparara. Tunaparara kutosha. Unaangalia uniform mtu aliajiriwa kitambo. Anakaa almost hata anapita 5 years.
Napata askari akiwa mgonjwa. Anaambiwa a day of duty. Akienda hospitali kutibiwa anakuja inaweka kwa ofisi. Tunaomba hii kitu inaitwa cap night ikuwe reviewed.
This comes as a letter from the head of public service Felix Koskei, directed that all uniformed officers of the Kenya Prison Service from the lowest rank of constable should receive a minimum monthly salary increase of 4,000 shillings effective July 2024 payroll. Late last year, President Ruto pledged a 40% increment in police officer salaries as part of recommendations by a task force on police reforms chaired by former Chief Justice David Maraga. Ben Kirui, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
The cracks within the Azimio coalition continue to widen, with a section of affiliate parties accusing Orange Democratic Movement of greed and wanting all positions for themselves. Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka expressed concerns over the decision by ODM to unilaterally appoint minority party leadership to the National Assembly from ODM without consulting affiliate parties. Other Azimio principals led by Peter Munya of PNU, Eugene Omalo of DAPK and Jeremiah Kioni of Jubilee have demanded the exit of ODM from the Azimio coalition, claiming it was no longer tenable for the party to continue being in the coalition while at the same time in government.
The battle for leadership within Azimio coalition is intensifying. Political parties within Azimio are calling for ODM's exit from the coalition, arguing that ODM cannot straddle both opposition and government roles after 4 of its members were nominated as cabinet secretaries.
There are two sides, the government and the opposition. Those who win the election form the government. Those who lose the election form the opposition. The inclusion of members from an Azimio affiliated party in government is untenable. Neither can the same be considered a government of national unity.
This demand follows a meeting on Wednesday where Azimio leaders criticized Raila Odinga for his secretive dealings with President William Ruto and cover pact that allegedly sidelines his core principles.
If you read our constitution carefully and clearly, you will see there is no animal in the constitution called government of national unity. That is a creation of self-serving politicians who want to reap from the suffering of the Kenyan people.
During the 3-hour Wednesday meeting at Kalonzo Musyoka's command center in Karen, Azimio leaders saying they questioned Raila Odinga about his undisclosed engagement with the president and the nominations of his allies to the government positions. They now seek his ODM's removal from Azimio, accusing him of failing to clarify these developments to the core principals, Kalonzo Musyoka of Wiper, Gideon Moi of KANU, Peter Muny of PNU, and Jeremiah Kioni of Jubilee.
We want to tell them that you can't be both the opposition and the government at the same time. That is like being like a bat that is neither bird or animal. He is on his way to the AU, and as he leaves, we will definitely make changes in the leadership of the coalition, and we're in the process of formalizing that.
The turmoil coincides with the Wiper Party's push to replace Ugunja MP Opiyo Wandayi, who is set to leave his minority leader post following his nomination as Energy Cabinet Secretary. ODM has proposed Suna East Member of Parliament Junet Mohammed as Wandayi's successor.
Leadership of the House is a matter for the parliamentary group of Azimio, right? Parliamentary group of Azimio, not parliamentary group of ODM, to agree on those names. Remember, we have somebody like Robert Mbui, who is a deputy minority leader, all right? And he was working with Wandayi that time. Wandayi is being proposed for a cabinet post.
Wiper is asserting its claim to the minority leader position, while some Azimio parties already consider Kalonzo Musyoka as the de facto leader of the coalition.
Azimio will have a retreat, and we are going to discuss all these things and give some very clear direction on the vibrancy of the opposition.
Speaking at Nairobi Chapel during the memorial service for Shazi Okoth, Kalonzo Musyoka announced that Azimio coalition parties will soon hold a retreat to resolve these political disputes.
Despite Wiper Party faulting the nomination of 4 members of the ODM party into the cabinet, it has now declared its interest in occupying the vacant position of minority at the parliament after Opiyo Wandayi was nominated as the cabinet secretary for energy. Will Wisikia, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Right, on data point, remember I told you we were talking about the decision by the Court of Appeal on the Finance Act of 2023, and it's just important to note that despite the decision by the Court of Appeal, of course, the government has several laws that guide the collection of taxes, including the income tax, there is the Value Added Tax Act, there is the Excise Duty Act, as well as the Customs and Excise Act that obviously guide the government on how to exactly collect revenue from different sectors of the society. But now, the decision by the Court of Appeal affects some of the following provisions. First of all, there was the introduction of the electronic tax invoice management system. It has been termed to be unconstitutional based on the ultimate decision. There's the VAT changes that had been instituted by the Finance Act of 2023, the VAT on fuel, the new bands of taxation of persons in the country, that is the payee, as well as the excess duty changes that we'll be looking at, some of them here. First of all, the exchequer revenue based on the Kenya Revenue Authority for the financial year ending June 2024, which was the first effect of the Finance Act of 2023, is that they received 2.22 trillion shillings. Then there were agency collections that included the housing levy up to 184 billion shillings, and in total the KRA reported 2.407 trillion shillings, which was a jump from the previous year of 2.166 trillion shillings. So some of the agency collections that were made by the Kenya Revenue Authority include the road maintenance levy, which is also usually called fuel levy, upwards of 80 billion shillings. There was the housing levy. The figure is still not very clear of how much the government was able to collect from that new tax. Petroleum regulatory levy, there's a petroleum development fund, and air passenger service charge, as well as aviation revenue. So all that totaled to 184 billion shillings, meaning being agency collections, they they are sent to the respective institutions or funds. Then, based on the performance of KRA as reported, they reported that domestic VAT actually grew by more than 6 billion shillings, because during the year ending June 2024, the KRA collected 314 billion shillings, up from a target of 307.8 billion shillings. The KRA, through the e-teams, was able to enhance compliance of VAT, and they said that it's because of that even though able to surpass the target. KRA also reported that over 280,000 VAT taxpayers were onboarded into the e-teams, with a decision now from the court about the Finance Act being unconstitutional. Then it would appear that e-teams cannot continue to operate in the country. Beyond that, what do we know is that there was another policy that came about with the Finance Act of 2023, the tax amnesty that was able to gather 43.9 billion shillings. However, that tax amnesty was only valid for that financial year. Remember, there was a proposal to extend it through the Finance Bill of 2024, but it was deleted through Parliament. Therefore, it does not exist anymore. Pay as you earn, the collections were 543 billion shillings. It grew by 48 billion shillings, partly because of the expansion of the tax bands for persons earning more than 500,000 shillings. Some of the VAT changes that were in the Finance Act of 2023 is petroleum products. The VAT initially was 8%. It is through that act that it was revised to 16%. There was zero rating of LPG gas, that is from 8% to zero rating. That's a benefit that came about from the Finance Act of 2023. With it being nullified, termed to be unconstitutional, then there's a chance of losing this. There was zero rated electric motorcycles as well as bicycles. There was zero rated solar and lithium ion batteries, as well as zero rated electric buses that came about from that particular law. We also know that VAT on super petrol as of June 2023, that is last year before the passage of the new act, was 8%. It was 13 shillings 53 cents. But because of rising to 16% as of June 2024, the VAT on a litre of petrol was 26 shillings 60 cents, which is basically double of that. And the current price of petrol is 188 shillings 84 cents. So if the VAT is to be halved, then you can deduct more than 13 shillings from that price to get to about 175 shillings. But again, EPRA says that they're still waiting for directions from the Office of the Attorney General. The country may have lost some protectionist measures that were instituted by the Finance Act of 2023, and these are based on excise duty on imports as follows. On imported fish, the excise duty was being introduced at 10%, imported sugar 5 shillings per kilogram, and the reason that was given by the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury at that time was that it was noted that there was increasing cases of diabetes, and therefore that needed to be instituted. There was cement, 10% of value, or 1.5 shillings per kilogram, and then furniture, 30% excess tax was introduced to protect the local industry. There was cellular phones at 10% to also promote the local assemblage of such devices. And then paints and varnishes, there was 15% of excess tax introduced, again to promote the domestic production. And then other lost gains were imported declaration fee. Import declaration fee had been reduced from 2.5%, from 3.5% to 2.5%, and the railway development levy had been reduced from 2% to 1.5%. And of course, this also affected the prices of petroleum products, that is at the pump. Then, now, looking at the current budget as revised, remember the Finance Bill of 2024 was withdrawn, and therefore the government through Parliament has been revising the plan, but also through the National Treasury, to an extent that the budget has dropped to 3.87 trillion shillings. The projected revenues as we speak is 3.05 trillion shillings, and this also includes the Finance Act of 2023, which gave about 311 billion shillings, which is inclusive of the housing levy, which you may remember that eventually there was a new law on housing, affordable housing, that would give a couple of billions there. So there is a chance that this projected revenue may go down if the Finance Act of 2023 is to be lost. And currently, the deficit already declared is 761 billion shillings that is supposed to be borrowed from domestically as well as outside the country. The initial plan for the budget of the financial year 2023-2024, meaning the year ending June 2024, was 3.68 trillion shillings. At that time, the total revenue was to be 2.9 trillion shillings and the grants were to be 42 billion shillings. So by that time, the declared deficit was 718 billion shillings. Of course, this changed after several supplementary budgets were presented through the House. So you can see what that would mean with the Finance Act of 2023 out of the way. The budget of 2023-2024, you're talking about, this should be 2022-2023. The implemented budget was 3.67 trillion shillings. The tax collections, 2.17, and of course, loans and grants, which were actual ones, was 1.18 trillion shillings. So you can see some of the gaps that will be caused by the Finance Act of 2023. But of course, we're still waiting for directions on what the government intends to do. Of course, Parliament, as well as the Office of the Attorney General, meaning the Executive and the National Treasury, have work to do to decide to appeal at the Supreme Court or to comply. And if they comply, then it means several tax measures will have to be foregone. But that's data point for this week. We take a short break. When we come back, we have so much more, including this.
Kenya Bankers Association urges the CBK to hold the base lending rate at 13% as inflation and other microeconomic factors remain stable.
Excuse me, can I get this? ไม่ได้ไหนเขากินกันเอาเมนูมันเผ็ดเกินไปสำหรับคุณ Try me.
Experience Swiss-based education in the heart of Nairobi. With practical hands-on skills, we prepare you for the dynamic world of culinary arts and patisserie or international hospitality management. Travel the world and gain global work experience through our international placement network as you shape your career as the next global future leader in hospitality. Welcome to the Boma International Hospitality College. August and September intake ongoing.
Ni aje mam, umeupdate token mita yetu?
Ai, kuupdate token mita yetu? Hiyo ni nini?
Acha nikuchanue mam, leta simu yako. So, kuna hii text tulipata from Kenya Power. Kwa hiyo text, kuna code 2. Weka code ya kwanza kureset token mita.
Welcome back. In business, the Kenya Bankers Association has recommended that the Central Bank of Kenya keeps its central bank rate unchanged at 13%. The recommendation comes amid a backdrop of stable headline inflation and well-anchored inflationary expectations. Jasmine Omboy reports.
The Monetary Policy Committee will be sitting again on August 6th to deliberate on the benchmark rate. And the Kenya Bankers Association, ahead of this meeting, is asking the central bank to maintain its current monetary policy stance. KBA's latest research note has cited several key factors supporting the call. Despite global economic challenges and diminished private sector confidence, Kenya's economic growth remains robust. However, the private sector is experiencing slower credit growth due to tighter credit conditions and elevated market interest rates, a direct consequence of the existing tight monetary policy. Further, the Kenya shilling is holding steady, bolstered by strong export performance and consistent inward remittances. However, the Bankers Association notes that emerging government financing risks continue to pose risks to the stability of the exchange rate, further delaying the easing of interest rates. KBA's position underscores the delicate balance the CBK must navigate as it looks to support economic growth while managing inflation and exchange rate stability. Jasmine Wamboi, Citizen TV.
Players in the pension and insurance sector are offering to help the government settle its pending bills running into billions of shillings. This through a public-private partnership arrangement, and the arrangement would involve investing their pool of resources in government debt as they await payment from the government upon agreed terms. Jimmy Mbogo now takes a look on this proposal and how the government and suppliers would benefit from the arrangement, which will help provide alternate capital for the government away from debt and increased taxation.
The pending bill menace continues to put constraints on government's expenditure, with the pending bill verification committee pointing out that the government owes contractors and suppliers at least 110 billion shillings. It is this debt that now presents an opportunity for players in the pension and insurance sector to mobilize resources, clear the pending bills for the contractors, even as they wait for payment from the government. In return, the contractors will need to forego interest accrued in return for immediate payment. The proposal, which was made during the launch of the first Sharia-compliant bond at the NSC, seeks to find alternative ways to mobilize resources for government projects away from the conventional debt that they say has become unsustainable.
We wish to advance a model which we believe will solve this matter. Our proposed solution is modeled around the reverse factoring concept, which is a financial solution that allows suppliers or contractors to receive early payment of their invoices from a financier who purchases the invoices at a discount and offers to wait for the payment from the government. The financier stands between both parties, providing an efficient mechanism for funds flow. The suppliers will benefit from improved working capital and reduced credit risk, while this will ease the government cash flow pressure.
Further, the partners will facilitate the establishment of a fund through a privately initiated public partnership arrangement that will purchase eligible invoices from suppliers. The fund will constitute resources from pension scheme, insurance life contracts and international investors seeking to diversify their portfolios in the market and increase their return. According to CPF Group CEO Jose Aquilo, the fund can be established under the Special Purpose Acquisition Vehicles Park Regulation under the Capital Market Authorities Act.
To make this attractive to investors in the fund, suppliers and contractors will be required to take a haircut, possibly up to 30%, as well as forfeiting the default interest they are entitled to under the contracts for delayed payments to be used as a payment for the financiers.
Should the proposal sail through, the suppliers will receive their payment from the central bank, with the government being required to provide an irrevocable standing order against revenues, assuring investors that their 100% payment of receivables will be made at the agreed terms and within the agreed period. This will be achieved by creating a fast charge on the County Revenue Fund (CRF) and the Consolidated Fund to prioritize payment of the installments to the financiers. Jimmy Mbogo, Citizen TV, Nairobi.